streak of bad luck. This is not just simply, well, we made a few bad decisions, but I'm sure if we make a few good decisions, it should be fine. They know that it is the Lord that's against them at this point. What has God done to us at this point? So it's acknowledgement at this point that God is in control of their lives. And as Deborah said, it's the first time that any of the sons other than Joseph have mentioned God. And once again, all the way, I said this a couple of weeks ago, all the way back to their birth. We've never seen any of these sons ever mention the Lord at any time in their life up until this point right here. So, but at this point, they acknowledge that God is in control of their lives, and he's bringing them to this point. And so they might say this, listen, the sovereign Lord of Egypt put us through some tests and tested us and examined us and put us in prison and all of those things and gave us a challenge and all of those things. But in all of that, who's the one who's really sovereign? It's the Lord. That's the one they're acknowledging now. All this stuff has happened to them, but it's God that is working in all of this. It's really the sovereign God that's in charge of all these things. And that's significant, once again, because the next two tests aren't from Joseph, they're from God. And they've come to the point where they realize that God's in charge of their life, not them. And not even this great man of Egypt is in charge of their life. The Lord, Elohim, Yahweh, is in charge of their life. So this is proof to them that God was present in their circumstances and that he was going to demand a reckoning for their sin regarding Joseph. Reuben just said it. This is a reckoning for what we did. And now the reckoning is happening. It's happening to all of them now at this point. They know their sin is against God, as David did in Psalm 51. You know, we can sin against others, and we do. We sin against others. Our sin is, the sixth of the commandments and the second of the great commandments, if you might call it that, has to do with our relationship with our fellow man. And so much of what we do of our fellow man is evidence of our view of the Lord in all of this, both by his example and his precept, his person, his character, his attributes, and all of that. He displays loving kindness towards sinful men, mercy towards sinful men. Once again, as I said last week, Christ on the cross while being nailed said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That's relationship with men, and we evidence our relationship to God through our relationship with men. And they know that in all of that even though I might say, well, I've sinned against this person, I did wrong to this person, I must ask forgiveness from this person, ultimately every sin is against God because it's his character, it's his person, it's his precepts, it's his example that show us the way we're supposed to treat our fellow men. That's where that comes from. And without God, listen, you can see that in the society. When you remove the Lord, even if you remove the Bible, and I'm not one of these people that says, listen, we remove prayer from school and this and that. A bunch of people who aren't Christian praying in school, I don't know what that does. But I will say this, when you remove the general acceptance and even, you might say, positive view of the Lord from a society, whether people are saved or not, when you do that, you will eventually see a decline in that society. That's just what always happens. And that's what happens, that's what even has happened in this family. But they know now that their sin is against David, is against God, as David did. But they had been living, their lives up to this point as if God did not exist, or at least did not exist for them personally to this point. So when they say, what is this that God has done for us? They are acknowledging the bearing of the true God on their lives for the first time in all this. By the way, a lot of people can do this. I'll just say this. It's easy to say, well, we don't have kids in here today, but it's easy to say, well, this is for this is my father's God. This is my father's religion, my mother's religion. I'm not sure it's for me. I kind of have the benefits of it, but I'm not sure it's for me. At some point, it has to be for you. It can't just be for your parents. And so at this point, they're realizing this is for them. This is upon them in all of this. What is it that God is doing to us is the statement that they make at this point. Well, how do you know you're beginning to come to grips with the true God of the Bible and not just a mere figment of your imagination? Well, it's when you become conscious of what? Sin. Exactly. It's when you become conscious of sin. And you realize, wait a second, there's a standard by which I'm living that does not work. I'm not consistent with that standard. What is that standard? Well, that standard is the Lord's law. It's God's law in all of this. God's character, once again. God's requirements upon me. So when you become conscious of sin and are troubled by it, their confession of sin, it's only to themselves at this point, is their first genuine awareness of the true God that are found, and they're found together. Their knowledge of sin and their knowledge of God come together at this point. And that's what happens in the life of everybody who's being sanctified. Those two things always come together. It's not good enough just to have a knowledge of your sin, is it? Listen, plenty of people are in hell very aware of their sin. very much aware of their sin. And plenty of people are going to hell, very much aware of their sin. You must become aware of God himself, the person of God, looking to the Lord, looking to the person of Jesus Christ in particular in all of this. And so we see that these two things come together within the space of just a few verses. And you cannot approach the true God without being aware of your sin, and you cannot find salvation without confessing sin. It's just not going to happen. You're never going to come to that point where you can be reconciled to God unless you will, in fact, acknowledge your sin in all of this. I think I have a quote that I might want to read to you. I don't know if this is, let me just take a look at something. It's something that's kind of been, I've actually had it in the notes every single week. It's somewhat, it's by a guy named William Plummer. He was actually a Presbyterian in Philadelphia in the 1800s. He wasn't at the 10th Street. He was at another street, like another street number. So they must have two good churches in that town. He wrote an excellent book. And one of the comments from the book was this: another state of mind, accompanied with great depression and much difficulty, is where one stoutly argues from his own wickedness of heart that his salvation is impossible. A man sometimes says, I would go to Christ, but he is so holy and I am so sinful. He is spotless and I am all pollution and guilt. And that's the point you have to come to. Now, do you stay there? Should you stay there? Should you ever have somebody stay there? No, you must continue to pursue Christ. You must continue to go to the cross. That's where salvation is found. It's not found just simply in acknowledging guilt. That's where they're at right now. Acknowledging guilt. They must pursue the Savior. They must pursue the means by which God gives them that they might be saved. And once again, we've never seen them use any of the means. I'm sure they did. We just have no evidence of it. Doesn't seem like a prominent part of their life to pursue the Lord by the means that they saw their father do when he built an altar as they moved along from one place to another, and they would build an altar. Okay, so that's the test 5 finished. Any questions about that? Okay, we'll move on now to test 6. Test 6 is in actually the rest of the chapter. So it's verses 29 through 38. And this is the test here. The test is going to be, did they earn Jacob's trust? Because now they return to their father, and the question is, did they earn Jacob's trust? So they now return to Canaan, and they come to see Jacob. And verses 29 through 34, they give the report of what happened. Now let's read that again, because we want to examine it for a moment. So verse 29, when they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him all that happened to them, saying, the man, the Lord of the land, spoke harshly with us and took us for spies for the country. But we said to him, we are honest men, we are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no longer alive, and the youngest is with our father today in the land of Canaan. The man, the Lord of the land, said to us, by this I will know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me, and take grain for the famine of your households, and go. But bring your youngest brother to me, that I may know that you are not spies, but honest men. I will give your brother to you, and you may trade in the land. So they give a report. Is the report they give true? Yeah, I don't see him saying anything wrong. I don't see him saying anything about it. Is it accurate? Okay. Is it complete? No. No, thank you. It's missing some things. It's actually missing quite a lot along the way. It's missing quite a lot. They don't acknowledge some things. They don't. What's one thing? What's something they don't acknowledge? Yeah, they don't say, hey, by the way, he put us in prison for 3 days. They say one of your brothers has to stay, but they don't say anything about, hey, by the way, all of us were put in prison. And at a certain point there, it looked like all of us were going to have to stay except one was going to come back. They don't say that. They don't give that account of this. What do they say? Remember, they had the discussion among themselves about Joseph in all of that. Do they tell that to their father? Do they come clean about what happened 20-some years ago? Do they say, by the way, we know all this is happening to us, as we just now said, because of what we did? Do they say that? No, they don't. They don't share that either. Do they say that one of them found the money in the sack? No, they don't say that either. See, all the stuff they're leaving out all has to do with the test they just now went through. They just now skipped over all of that. All the tests they failed, they come back as if they did something right. Well, one of our brothers had to stay. They don't even say he was bound. They don't say he was put in there against his will. I don't know what they say. They don't say what they did. But clearly one of them, Simeon's missing. That's quite certain. Did they make him out to be some kind of a hero that volunteered to stay? I don't know. They don't even address the issue. The point is they leave things out. And all the stuff they leave out is the very stuff that's the most important thing for them to deal with at this point. Instead, they basically just kind of say, well, what we need is our brother. Go ahead. Absolutely right. They forget the fact. So exactly right. So Paul's statement was that they also do not mention God. They don't say anything about God. Even though they just now said the Lord is the one that's against us in all of this. He's the one dealing with us. He's the sovereign in all of this. We've sinned against him. They don't say anything about that to their father. They don't mention that. It's all this stuff. Listen, when I read the scriptures, you probably know this just from my teaching. When I read the scriptures, I read it for what's there, particularly the observations. Just what's the word used? What's that word used? What does that word mean? Where else is that word used? Where else is that word used? Remember context. Where's that word used in this section? Where's that word used in this book? Where's that word used by this author, whoever the writer happens to be? Paul might use the word differently than John would, let's say. Where is it used in the Bible? That's kind of what all that I'm looking for, okay? And I'll consider some interpretations and things like that, some applications, particularly for myself. I can't apply it for you, honestly. I can tell you, listen, all of us should do this. That's about it as far as what application is concerned. But the last thing I kind of do is, but what's not said? What's not being said here that I might have assumed might have been said? What's left out that I might have assumed might have been in there? And is there any significance to it not being there? And there's a lot of things left out in this account that they give, that they don't share with their father. And there's great significance to everything that they did in all of this. So unlike the last time, but at least you could say a little bit, unlike the last time they returned without a brother, remember the last time they returned without a brother was 20 years ago. And it was Joseph. And everything they did there was completely dishonest. They said, oh, we found this coat. Is this the coat of your son? We found it out there and it's got blood all over it. Is this the one? That's what they did then. Completely dishonest. Now they at least have some honesty. The things they say, they won't say anything that is untrue. They simply don't say the rest at this point. They leave out, here this time they leave out some key details, and I would say intentionally, but at least they're not speaking a falsehood. They're beginning to learn to what it's like to live by truth and not lies, and by honesty rather than deceit. They're starting to learn a little bit about that. They're certainly not, they're being dishonest by what they leave out, but they're not doing what they did 20 years ago. They're not acting the same way about it that they did then. So let's move on now to verses 35 through 39. This is really the test then. So verse 35, now it came about as they were emptying their sacks that behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when they and their father saw their bundles of money, they were dismayed. Their father Jacob said to them, you have bereaved me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more, and you would take Benjamin, and all these things are against me. Then Reuben spoke to his father, saying, you may put my 2 sons to death if I do not bring him back to you. To put him in my care, and I will return him to you. But Jacob said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he alone is left. If harm should befall him on the journey you are taking, then you will bring my gray hair down to Sheol in sorrow. So this is the test. Did Jacob trust him? Well, first of all, we can say this. This is exactly the same fear he had in verse 2, where he said, if I send my son down with you, I may not get him back. Well, I just now sent my 10 sons down, and one of them didn't come back. This is exactly the fear I had about you guys, that you would not return all of my sons. You would not bring them all back in this way. Somehow or another, something would happen and you wouldn't bring them back. And this is exactly the reason, by the way, that none of them wanted to go back and face their father. Because they knew that he would respond in this way. That he would not want to lose his sons in this way. And, probably more importantly, that he doesn't trust them. Because if he trusted them, he would be okay with saying, I trust you, you will get the job done. You will go and you will bring back. You will go and bring back all. You will do that. And they do not have the trust of their father at this point. And quite frankly, now in all of this, this is the fear they had once again. But now it's made far worse by what happens when they open the bags and all of them have their money in the bag. It's far worse now. Because not only do they not bring back the son, they seemingly stole the money. Now, are these trustworthy men, according to Jacob? They weren't at the start of the chapter. Are they more trustworthy at the end? They're less trustworthy at the end. Because not only did they lose a brother, They brought back their money as if they were thieves. And he'd think the same thing that Joseph might have thought. Once again, they don't know Joseph is Joseph in all of this. They don't know that. They just know that for some reason their money was in their bag at the station. At the first stop, they found money in the bag. And once again, they could be thought of as thieves, and their brother Simeon and all that is back there. Now they come all the way home and all their money is there. Once again, it wasn't important who the first one was, because this was a test for all of them. And all of them have their money in their bag at this point. We see it's a test for all of them then in all of this. And so the fact is that Jacob will not trust them, because now it's made far worse by the evidence of the money in their bag. So they emptied their sacks, and Jacob saw the money, and they all have their money back, and they are dismayed at this point. And the Hebrew word dismayed, I'm actually not sure why it translates it that way here, because almost all the time it's translated as frightened. Frightened is usually the way it's translated, but dismayed, I'm sure, goes along with it. Their hearts being stopped, trembling, as they were before, and I'm sure now all the same for them. Once again, hearts being stopped, trembling about this situation in all of this, and in this. So he did not trust them once again, and this only confirms his view of their character. And I would say this too: was Jacob a thief? Yeah, he stole what? They stole the birthright. And you know what? Oftentimes people who sin whatever sin they have, they tend to see it in everybody. It's kind of like what's that saying? You can't con a con man or something like that, because they're going to see you. They know the con man. They know what the con looks like. They're doing it all the time. They see it all the time. They're just going to see it in you at this point. And so I'm sure that Jacob, seeing money in sacks, and knowing that he had been a thief at some point, just says, well, listen, you're just a thief. That's what you are. My sons are a bunch of thieves. They didn't bring back one of the brothers. They already lost another brother before. I don't trust them with the last brother in all of this. And so it just all confirms and affirms for Jacob what's been going on here in all of this. And so he thought that they were the cause. Notice how he says this here in the verse. Let me find that here. He says in verse 38, their father Jacob said to them, you have bereaved me of my children. Joseph is no more. Simeon is no more. And you would take Benjamin. All these things are against me. Who does Jacob blame? Them. You have bereaved me of my sons, is what his statement is. You've done it. You're the cause. You're responsible for this. It's your guilt in all of this, is what he does. And so he does not trust them. In fact, he blames them for what happened in all of this. And so then Reuben makes an offer. Verse 37, Reuben makes an offer. And what's his offer? You can kill my two sons if I don't bring back Benjamin. You can just go ahead and kill my two sons. And is that a good offer? That's a terrible offer. It's absurd. It's offensive. Because you're effectively asking Jacob, if I don't bring back your son that you love so much, guess what you get to do now, Jacob, to make yourself feel better? You get to kill your two grandsons. Is that going to work at all? Is that helpful at all? No, it's not. But this is once again, I said Reuben might be a little better than the others. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is he's got a very twisted view of what's right and wrong, what makes sense. And this is what happens once again when sin enters our mind. Everything gets twisted around. And so, but that's the offer he makes about this point. But it does show a small shift. Remember, he's the guy who previously was serving himself with his father's wife, who was concerned about what his father would think in all of this. And his father's happiness didn't stop him. But at least he's thinking about his father's happiness in some way, shape, or form at this point. But it's not, certainly, once again, not a good offer at this point. It reminds me of what Pastor mentioned the other night about Samuel or the judges and the time when the concubine was cut up and sent throughout Israel. It just showed the wickedness of Israel. You might say, well, there was something done wrong and there was punishment and all this. Yeah, but none of it made any sense. It was just wickedness is what it was. And it just shows the twisted state of men's mind when they engage in sin. And that's what Reuben has been doing, and this is what comes out then. So then finally, in verse 38, we have Jacob's final response in the view of his life. And he says there, but Jacob said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he alone is left. If harm should befall him on your journey you are taking, then you will bring my gray hair down to Sheol in sorrow. And so he won't allow Benjamin to go. He'd really rather die than lose Benjamin in this life. I'd rather die first than to lose my son or see my son lost. Benjamin, at this point, I suppose what parent wouldn't think that way? We don't want our children to go before us. But he also reveals, I think, his the continued source of the rivalry that's been going on. His brother is dead, and he alone is left. And he still has that thing that he's been doing where he favors these sons of Rachel. And it's many respects, listen, that was a test for them and they failed it. But it is something that he created in many respects in the family and created a separation of the sons of Rachel from others. And it acknowledges that he has gray hairs. And, have your parents ever done this to you? Have you ever done this to your kids where you say, you're giving me gray hairs? Or for me, you're causing me to lose my hair, and all of this. You're the one causing all the situation with what you do and what you do and what you do. I know my wife's mom has said that before, I'm pretty sure. And, so we might say that, and he's kind of saying that here. You've caused this. I'm going to go down to Sheol with my gray hair because of you guys and what you do in all of this. So that's test number 6. We've got a few minutes left, and we can finish with test number 7, so that's good. Chris, you'll be up next week then. Okay, thank you. So test number 7, this is the test of Jacob and Benjamin. Now, it's not directly in the text, but it's one that we can see here. And I want to look at it from both people, because these are the ones that didn't go down to Egypt, but they're also being tested in all of this, quite obviously by their reaction, or as we're going to look at Benjamin, a lack of reaction. So first of all, we would say Jacob is tested here. Now, Jacob has a lot of options at this point that he could do. His only option he sees is, you're not taking my son. That's the only option he sees at this point. What other options, what's the best option he has at this point? What's that? Send Benjamin. That's a good option, but he has one far better. It's an option available to every single one of us today. He can pray. He can pray, but he doesn't. You don't see him praying to the Lord. You don't see him calling unto the Lord. You don't see him asking for wisdom. You don't see him asking, like Job did, for forgiveness for his sons for what they've done. In all of this, he doesn't call upon the name of the Lord. This is the test of Jacob, and he does not do that. I'm not saying whether he did or he didn't, but it's not recorded here. There's nothing that's not his reaction. His reaction and his words are, I'm going down to Sheol with my gray hair because of you guys. My life is over and it's worthless. It's nothing. We're all going to die here because of what you've done or haven't done or all of that. So Jacob is tested. The test is, will you call upon the Lord? Will you trust the Lord who made promises to him about his offspring becoming a great nation? Will you trust the Lord? And when we look back at that time where God told him, I'll give you the speckled and the spotted, and then he went and did those strange things with the reeds and all that kind of stuff and lining things up. And we said, well, that's a bizarre thing, and never really figured out why he did that. It doesn't make any sense. But what it did show was that he believed the Lord told him, you're going to get the speckled and the spotted. And he thought, if I do this, the speckled and the spotted. But he believed the promise was true. And he acted in accordance with it. The promise that he was given that's supreme among all of them is, I'll make a great nation out of you. And all of those things. You'll be a great people. And now he's like, no, we're just going to die here. So he doesn't have a trust in the Lord that the Lord will keep his promise. He really fails here. He won't send Benjamin until he must. He eventually does, of course, in the next chapter. But he won't send Benjamin till God forces it upon him. Let me ask you this much. He won't give up Benjamin. But what was Abraham willing to do because the Lord asked him to do it? To sacrifice his son, his only son, Isaac, really. His beloved son, Isaac. He was asked to do that, and he got up early the next morning and went to do it. Is Jacob behaving like Abraham, a man of faith? When he was tested? No, he's not at this point. He's not behaving in that way. He has a preferential love for his sons. Who's he willing to sacrifice in this? Simeon. Yeah, he's willing to leave Simeon down there. Who cares about Simeon? Poor Simeon, he's down there bound up and all of that. I kind of think that Joseph took good care of Simeon. That's my view. It doesn't say that, but I suspect that Simeon was well taken care of down there in some way, shape, or form. But he has a preferential love for his sons. He's willing to sacrifice Simeon rather than take the chance on losing his beloved Benjamin, the last reminder of the woman he loved. He also seems, once again, it's all about him. He also seems to think that only he's affected by the terrible turn of events. This is all terrible for me. Everything's terrible for me. Does he ever consider the sons that it's terrible for them? Does he consider Simeon it's terrible for them? Or the rest of the family that we might die if we don't do something? No, he doesn't consider any of that. He's very focused on himself. Perhaps he thinks they're just guilty, so who cares what they think? But he never considers they might have grief about their guilt and about the situation that they're in. So that's Jacob's test. And then Benjamin's tested. Now, Benjamin isn't mentioned here, but what does that then indicate that Benjamin does not do? He doesn't step up and say, I'm ready to go. He doesn't step up. And Benjamin, we said it already, he's in his 30s by now probably. He's got kids. When they leave to go down, he's got like 4 sons already. This is not a little boy we're talking about here. This is a man in the house. And he doesn't step up and say, wait a second, Dad, I'll go. You can't stop me from going. My brother's down there. This is what we have to do in order for us to live and have food and all this kind of stuff. I'll trust the Lord. He doesn't do any of those things. He sits there quietly, doesn't speak up, whether he's willing to go or not willing to go. He doesn't advocate for his brother Simeon. In short, he sits in silence while his father condemns his second oldest brother to death on his behalf, is really what he does. So do Jacob and Benjamin pass the test? No, they don't. Okay, so let me finish up now with this. And this is, once again, this outline came from the book by Vodi Bakum on Joseph, the life of Joseph. I've deviated from it in places. But basically, this was the outline. And chapter, I just want to end with what he ends the chapter on chapter 42 on. I want to read that to you. Because I think it's important, once again. We never want to leave people at a state where they're nothing but guilty. We always want to point them to the cross. We always want to point them to redemption at all times. Chapter 42, we always have to make sure they understand their sin. Don't get me wrong. But we always have to point them to the cross. Chapter 42 ends in what appears, this is what he says. Chapter 42 ends in what appears to be abject failure and hopelessness. Aside from knowing that Benjamin is alive, we also know that the brothers don't trust each other. Jacob doesn't trust them collectively, and apparently Benjamin doesn't either. There is no leader among them, and they all still lack integrity. Not only do we need a chapter 43, which is what Chris will start next week, we need some hope. Joseph needs some hope. At this point, think about this, at this point, he may be better off giving them their grain, sending them on their way, and thanking God for delivering him from such a mess. I mean, honestly, couldn't he do that and say, that's a mess down there? I don't want to be a part of that. I got a pretty good life here. However, we know that that is not how the story ends. God is going to redeem the family in all of this, and there will be a leader, and Joseph will be reunited with a transformed family, and although things are dark, there is indeed hope, and that hope begins in the next chapter. So let's close in a word of prayer. Our Father, we thank you once again for your merciful granting of us this time and your word, Father, and of the clarity of it. And we know, Father, that we do not measure up to your standard either, so we're thankful for Jesus Christ. We're thankful for the eternal covenant between Father and Son, that all those that the Son dies for and saves, Father, that those all will be redeemed and will be in eternity with you. And we look forward to that time in the future, but we thank you for this picture of it, this glimpse, this small sample of it that we get here as we open your word. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.